All right, everyone's jumping up and down regarding the FASB rule changes, and I want to go through what these FASB rule changes are and why I think that it's not going to actually incentivize corporate treasuries to come into Bitcoin. So we're going to get into that, and by the end of it, I think you will be agreeing with me. So the best breakdown that I saw of the FASB rule changes was from James Lavish, and he put this tweet out, and it was fantastic. So I'm just going to reference the tweet, go through it, give you my thoughts, and then we're going to go through what I think about why Bitcoin will not go into corporate treasuries. So basically how FASB worked, right? FASB is the Financial Accounting Standards Board. For the first part of this video, I'm going to be looking down because I'm reading the tweet here and referencing it. So this was the single best breakdown of the FASB rules that I saw on Twitter. So that's what I want to reference. It's the Financial Accounting Standards Board, known as FASB. Why it's important is because while to you and I, it might not seem important, the SEC recognizes them as the standard for the generally accepted accounting principles, which is GAAP accounting, right? They accept this as the rules, basically. So corporations have to follow these rules. If they don't, no big accounting firm is going to say that their accounts are correct, and therefore they're in violation. So this is extremely important. Now, up till yesterday, Bitcoin was classed as a long-lived intangible asset based on these rules. What that means, it's like James compares it to a patent, a copyright, or a trademark, right? Now, this is insane because up till now, what's actually happened is, let's say you bought a patent for a drug, and this, I'm using the same example as James uses in his tweet. Let's say you bought a patent for a drug for $100 million. Okay, and now let's say tomorrow a competitor comes out and they have a better drug than you. So now your patent, which is independently valued, is only worth $50 million. You actually have to mark down that loss on your balance sheet at $50 million. It's got an impaired value of $50 million. Okay, now let's say that the day after that, the competitor's drug doesn't work, kills a few people, and your patent comes back into full swing and it's now worth $150 million. Tough. You still have to carry that impaired value at $50 million until you sell the patent and realize the profit. That's been the rules up to now, and Bitcoin has been that. Bitcoin has been classed as one of those. This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy, right? So corporate treasuries have not come into Bitcoin because if you buy $1 million of Bitcoin and the value goes up to, or let's say the value drops 50%, and you got to actually mark down that 500,000 as a loss, and then it goes up to 1.3 million. You can't say that my Bitcoin is now worth 1.3 million. It doesn't make sense based on the GAAP accounting rules. So that has now changed, right? And by the way, what this means for companies like MicroStrategy, for example, is that they've bought billions of dollars of Bitcoin. As Bitcoin goes down, they've got to realize the loss or mark it down as a loss. And when Bitcoin goes up, they can't say that they've made a profit. Whereas now that's changed. And what it means is every quarter, the company has to look at a recognized exchange and look for its market value. So look on Coinbase, for example, and look at the market value of Bitcoin, and they can actually put on their balance sheet that we have Bitcoin worth whatever the quarterly mark-to-market value is, which is obviously much better, right? It's exactly what it should have been right from the start. And so, yeah, it is, the FASB has decided to change these rules, and this is absolutely fantastic. It's certainly going to, allow companies like MicroStrategy and other companies that will put some treasury into Bitcoin, the ability to increase the value of their corporations as a result of having Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And that's absolutely fantastic. Here's why I don't think that's going to happen. Right? James goes on to say corporate treasuries are incoming. There'll be a rush of companies ready to pour their treasury into Bitcoin, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? I don't think it's going to happen. I'm going to talk about why. Let's imagine that I'm setting up a new business and it's a new technological innovation and I want you to invest in my business. and you believe in the technological innovation that I'm doing, and you give me $100,000. A year later, you come and check what's going on in your investment. There's no new office, there's no new staff, there's nothing going on. However, the value of my investment has been going up. And you look around and go, okay, right, is this in the metaverse, or what the fuck's going on here? Are we going to get arrested or what? And I tell you, no, I just put the treasury into Bitcoin while I figure some stuff out. And you say, it's taken you a year, you've put my return, you put my cash into Bitcoin, it's been going up in value, but I now have the risk of you never actually being smart enough to bring this technological innovation to market. I've got the risk of trusting you to hold this Bitcoin when all I could do is just buy my own Bitcoin. You're going to tell me to give you back your capital, right? It's the same thing. It doesn't make sense for you to give me capital for me to put it into Bitcoin when you can just do it yourself and be in control of all the risk factors. It's the same thing on a bigger scale. Let's say Elon Musk. The reason why you invest in Tesla, if you are a Tesla shareholder, is because you believe in the dream that Elon Musk is selling, which is the world is going to go to electric cars. Electric cars are better, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you believe in that. You say, I'm going to invest and believe in Elon Musk's vision for the world. Let's say Elon Musk tells you 50% of his cash is now in Bitcoin. What message is that sending to the shareholders? Same as the other message that in the example that I used regarding me and you. The message is, I don't know what to do with this capital, so I'm just going to put it into Bitcoin. And yes, you're generating a return, but the assets are in Bitcoin and the vision is not moving forward. In that scenario, what any reasonable shareholder would do is say, well, give me back my capital and I can go and invest in Bitcoin myself and generate these returns. And I don't have the risk of Elon Musk. I don't have the risk of the board. I don't have the risk of governments coming in and trying to shut you down. I don't have any of these risks. I don't have any risks of any cancel culture, woke agendas, none of that, right? So you're going to say, give me back my capital as a Tesla shareholder, and I'm going to go and invest in Bitcoin, especially as this ETF is coming around. So now you can start to see how capital starts getting drained from the stock market, because up until now what's happened is, because there was no alternative, can't go and invest in real estate, doesn't do anything, I'd rather invest in growth stocks. Compared to that, you now have an alternative. You and I now have an alternative to investing rather than just leaving our money dead sitting in a company, even if it's going to put 50% of its treasury into Bitcoin. Because with a broker account, if you own Tesla stock and you're 50% of their corporate treasuries in Bitcoin, I can just click two buttons. I can click sell on Tesla, buy on the Bitcoin ETF, and I'm good. I got those returns coming in. I've got less risk. I've got less fees, everything, right? And this is where it's going to be interesting to see what happens to MicroStrategy, because MicroStrategy carries a premium on its stock price for being a de facto Bitcoin ETF. With MicroStrategy, most capital going in there, you're buying the Bitcoin exposure and you're getting the business for free. So that's what's happening there, and it's going to be interesting to see once an ETF is approved, which is coming now because the SEC keeps getting a black eye from the courts. It's going to be interesting to see what actually happens to that premium attached to the MicroStrategy share price. And this is why I don't think corporate treasuries en masse are going to come to Bitcoin. And by the way, it doesn't matter, because there's only like $6 to $8 trillion of corporate treasuries, and they should be focused on innovating. They should be focused on that. We have a very, very false system right now where we have given this money to these companies that call it innovation and then give us a new phone with a slightly upgraded camera every single year. That's going away. Because now, as a shareholder, I can decide. I don't have to leave my money with you. There is an alternative, and it's called Bitcoin. So I can just take my money out. You either give me a dividend, or I take my money out, and I go and buy the Bitcoin ETF, generate better returns than what you were giving me, because you have no longer innovated. When you decide to actually start innovating again, and I believe in your path of innovation, you let me know, and I'll give you my money back. But until then, I have an alternative to generate better returns. You know, the two best performing stocks for 2023 have been GBTC and MicroStrategy, both Bitcoin plays. So there is an alternative. This is how capital starts being drained out of that $100 trillion stock market. is what I've been saying for a couple of years, because there is an easy alternative, and Bitcoin's being accepted now worldwide as a asset. It's in the running for being discussed as an alternative, as a competitive asset to the stock market. So this is why I don't think big treasuries en masse are coming to Bitcoin. The message that is sent is just wrong. No CEO wants to stand up and say, we're this great innovative company and we put 50% of our treasury into Bitcoin. It does not make sense. And by the way, I was on the bandwagon of the corporate treasuries are coming, the corporate treasuries are coming. What makes more sense is the $100 trillion locked in the stock market, the $330 trillion locked in real estate. That makes more sense. These companies should keep the cash on hand and focus on innovating and deliver the promises that they've made to their shareholders. And by the way, if a company wants to put a small amount into Bitcoin, that makes sense to me, right? I can see low single digits coming into Bitcoin from corporate treasuries. But I think MicroStrategy, Michael Saylor are a legendary one and done moment for the stock market, and I think that he is going to go down as an absolute legend, because I don't think this is going to be repeatable. We'll see, ultimately, we'll see what happens, but I do not think that this is going to be repeatable, because I don't think shareholders, boards, marketing departments will allow it, right? Because if you're BlackRock and you're investing capital in a company, and the company says, we're going to put 50% of our treasury into Bitcoin, why would you give them money? I can just go buy the BlackRock ETF. Why would I give you that risk capital if you're not going to do anything risky with it? So this is why I don't think all of these treasuries are going to come to Bitcoin. I don't think this is going to be the record-breaking waterfall of capital. What is going to be that ETF approval. It is going to be people coming out of the stock market realizing that, wait a second, I'm taking all these risks when I can just own the asset myself, pay low, tiny fractions of a percentage for the ETF wrapper to manage it, the ETF provider to manage it. And there is so many other alternatives now compared to just holding random stock of random company because they're owning Bitcoin. Up until now, there hasn't been, and that's the advantage that MicroStrategy took advantage for. And regardless of what happens to these corporate treasuries, there are still only 3 rules to Bitcoin. It's rule number 1, you buy Bitcoin. Rule number 2, you shut the fuck up. And rule number 3, you get fabulously wealthy. And while you're getting fabulously wealthy, I'd appreciate if you could subscribe to the channel, because if you love talking about Bitcoin, that's all I do here all day, talk about Bitcoin. And the faster you subscribe, the faster it helps me get this message out to the people that need to hear it the most, who are sitting on their melting ice cube, whether it is the S&P 500 index or the real estate that they're holding. And by the way, my next video is going to be comparing the value that has been lost in the stock market versus the amount of money that's been printing. So you want to subscribe so you can see that. Thank you very much. I'll speak to you soon.